So many of you have seen my $4 million video. I am so touched that many of you reached out to me. And so today I just thought I would do a more detailed breakdown and analysis of what you could do if you really wanted to push into that new launch strategy that I mentioned, but I didn't go into deep detail. I'll be sharing with you about the property life cycle at the end and how it works. But before that, I'll actually show you apples to apples if you're looking at a $3.9 million property, for example, because I did have a client actually call me with this problem. They were looking specifically at the morning site, which is closing for around 3.8 mil plus, what that would actually mean for them. So I know that this is going to speak to a lot of people because most of us are in this $4 million question mark right now. And today's video is really going to help you break down the figures and definitely give you some figures to think about. But of course, if you need a personalized plan, please scan this QR code and get in touch with me because there's nothing better than a one-to-one consult. I'm sarahxmiracle. I make videos like this every single week, and we talk about how real estate should serve your family, help you make family-centric decisions to make sure that this real estate serves the purpose of your family and not the other way around. As a mother of 4, I highly empathize with your family needs. So let's get going, and I'll explain to you now how you're going to be able to get that capital gain without compromising on the livability of your family. So firstly, I want to bring attention to this particular trend I have on the screen, and it's showing you specifically District 9, 10, 11. The trend over the last 5 years for large format condos in 9, 10, 11 has only gone up by 14.8%. Now, compared to the RCR, now we're talking about the fringe areas that are extremely popular with upgraders because these are where all the good schools are still being held. Okay, don't talk to me about Bukit Timah Elite Stretch. I'm telling you there are lots of really good schools in the RCR, and the new launch condos have gone up. We're talking 49% increase in our RCR new launches. Now, what does this mean? This means that if 4 years ago, you had spent the equivalent amount of money, which I have done in my 3 million condo mistake, which I personally lost out on $1.5 million gains if I had put into a landed, or at least a $700,000-800,000 gain if I had put into a new launch instead of resale. I have shown that video of how I had lost out. Now, so if you had that $3 million, you could have essentially made those gains on either landed or if you're PR, on a new launch. So now moving forward, what do we do? Now, the first thing we want to make sure of is that we need to be in position to rent and not be afraid of that. Because if you really want to be buying into a building under construction, you have nowhere to stay. So be comfortable. I'm telling you the hard truth with renting. Now, I know some people are like,
Oh no, I want to stay where I own where I stay.
Can I just tell you that rental is one of the best ways to access properties that you might not even be able to own because of the location and size factors? For example, in the CCR, a lot of the large condominiums that you would love to buy are owned by what you call old money in Singapore. What does that mean? That means that they already own 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties in Singapore. This is what an investment holds. They're renting it out for good rental income. They cannot replace this property because of ABSD and they will never let it go to you. So there's a lot of these properties that are on the rental market, beautiful large homes that will not come out for sale because the owners cannot replace them. Sad to say. So these are properties that you can access for anywhere. Look at Morningside, you've got 7.5 to 8,000 rental, 1,008 to 1,900 square foot, 4-bedroom, all en suites. That's the kind of thing you can get. And if you wanted to pay for that at $3.8 million at Morningside, your mortgage, which I will calculate for you right now, on a $3.8 million, and assuming that you are right now in your 40s, let's just put it down, then be realistic because not everybody makes the money when they're in their 30s. Let's look at this. Resale purchase. You are turning 40 years old this year. I'm doing the math right in front of you so you know what is happening right now. We're talking at 3.8. It's more than 3.8 now. Let's just put it as 3.9. We're talking a loan of $2.9 million, 25 years. Your monthly installment is $11,767. So you've got an $11,000 mortgage, of which equivalent rental would be $7,500. So we're talking about roughly a $3,000 to $4,000 difference in that. Now, I'm going to show you what happens to your mortgage if you're talking about a mortgage like that. So we have a mortgage calculator, amortization table, and I'm going to show you right now. Your $3.9 million Morningside property, now you're talking about roughly 2% interest rates because we can't guarantee that interest rates will stay so low forever. We're talking about a loan tenure of 25 years. This is consistent. Our monthly repayment, oh my goodness, this has an even higher rate because there has to be a tolerance. Interest rates may not stay at 1.5% forever. We're talking about 2% now. Your monthly repayment is $12,398. And we're talking about a monthly interest right now of $4,875. And you're paying monthly principal $7,500. So over time, your loan balance is only going to go down when you pay the principal, not the interest. So we're talking about interest of roughly like a third right now. And if interest rates were to go up in the next 5 years, which we don't know, let's say going back to the 3.5% that it was at some point, we actually even hit 4%. Now you're talking about a $14,000 interest mortgage. Now let's say interest rates went up to roughly 3.5% and you never know when that will happen. You might only be able to lock in your low interest rate for the first 2 years. If you look at your amortization, now your monthly interest is going to flip into becoming $8,500 a month for your interest and principal $6,000. And that was what I faced exactly in a high interest rate environment when I was having my own house from 2020 to 2025, which meant that I was paying more interest than actual principal. And that is what would happen. And that's the risk of currently holding on to a resale property in this particular price range, because the moment the interest rates flip up beyond 3%, you're going to be paying roughly the same amount that you will be doing for a rental, or even more than a rental in this particular case, because you can get a house for $7,500 to $8,000 rental at this particular property at the Morningside. And it could be anything. It could be a 4 million property, it could be a 4.2. But we're talking about this particular range of properties in District 9, 10, 11 that are already at this price. So what I'm going to say is this: the risk of holding a resale condo right now, a large format resale, is that the moment interest rates change, you will be paying more interest on your property than paying down the principal. Concept number 1, interest more than principal. Now, that particular interest rate environment, we cannot predict. And so this is a high risk for this level and this quantum of resale condos. So therefore, people are like, oh gosh, Sarah, I already own a resale condo now. Like, what is my next step? Should I be selling it? Should I be holding on to it? Like, what do we do? Right now, I'm not advocating this for everybody, because if you're in a position to buy exactly what you want, like you love that dream house, you should absolutely go for it. And you should not be watching this video. Please, if you prepared your finances, you've done all your homework, you have enough down payment so that your mortgage is going to be at a comfortable rate, I would love to represent you as a buyer. We can go shopping and I can help you choose the perfect miracle home. But if you're still wondering and have questions, that is what this video is for. So I'm going to do a very clear conceptual example right now of what it means to therefore instead look into capital appreciation of your $3.9 million resale condo if you were to buy it, versus, let's say, putting the same amount of equity, so I'm talking about roughly a $1 million equity for 25%, into a new launch instead. So I'm going to go down into my calculator right now. We're looking at the investment perspective because we're all about capital gain right now. In terms of own stay benefits, you cannot deny that buying your own house, being able to renovate it to whatever you want, like that has an intangible value as well. So I'm not saying that you don't go and buy a resale property, but I'm just saying that if we want delayed gratification, we want to be able to increase our buying power through our down payment, or we want to be able to actually reduce the amount of loan that we're taking, we do need to consider a capital building exercise instead of trying to find a condo that actually doesn't exist. Because most people want their ideal large format condo, but sometimes there's just no inventory. Right now, the inventory is so low for these kind of properties in the 9, 10, 11 districts because, like I said, most of them are being rented out to expats who would pay a reasonable rental, and these properties cannot be replaced. Now, right now, I'm just doing an exact comparison of the same quantum resale versus this. And look, our annual growth over the last 5 years, 2020, 2025, in the graph that I show you, was only 14% overall over 5 years. So when you take 14% divided by 5, that's less than 3%. Let me calculate that for you right now. 14.8%. So actually it's almost 3%, and that's pretty not bad already, all things considered, for resale, because it used to be worse. 14.8 divided by 5. Here we're talking 2.96. You know what? Let's just leave it there at the 3% acceleration. But I want you to look at this. 49% growth in the last 5 years is actually much more than 5%. So 49% divided by 5 years, we're talking a 9.8% acceleration for your condos. Like, tell me, Sarah, are you sure we can sustain and all? That was like boosted by COVID. Well, I'm telling you, even pre-COVID, the numbers for our new launches were consistently at 4.9% annualized, whereas our resale condos were consistently at a negative 1% annualized. So all things considered, we've already gone through a COVID boost. So 3% annual growth is already from a COVID boost. And yes, 9.8% is a COVID boost. But when things start to normalize, they're going to normalize towards what they were in the past, pre-COVID. And so 5% is actually a very conservative estimate. So I would say something in between a 5 and a 9.8% to somewhere along the lines of a 7% growth for the new launch category. So you can see here that the main difference will be your total gross profit, because In your new launch, you're talking about a $1.2 million potential growth, annualized at 7%. It could be lower than that, but it's still going to be massively more than your $489,000 from your resale condo at 3%. And already this 3% is very optimistic because technically we're looking at an average of 1.5 to 2% year on year. So now we're going to be looking at the expenses because remember, we want to still rent somewhere because we don't stay anywhere. So I'm giving you a very generous budget, okay? $7,500, like I said, is what you can rent a 4-bedroom at Morningside for. Central location, 4 bedrooms with en-suites. My other client at Traverse Park, they also have a very nice large format 3-bedroom for almost 1,000 square feet, near MRT, near schools. So $7,500 is a respectable budget for you to get a nice sized District 9, 10, 11 big condo. But here's the kicker. You have a lot of expenses that you're talking about for resale condo that we have not even analyzed. So for example, if you buy a resale condo in the CCR, we're talking easily about a $700-800 a month maintenance for a large condo. It might go even sometimes to $900, which was the case in Astrid Meadows. In fact, that might be more reasonable because usually some of these condos either have very big land or very low unit size. And because they're older, they tend to have larger maintenance. You may need to do like sinking fund top-ups sometimes, where we have, I don't know, a few $1,000s going in. We're talking $4,000-5,000 top-ups every few years. Also because it's an old condo, I'm sure you want to renovate it from gut. So we're talking about easily a $200,000 renovation cost. I renovated my penthouse and that was already on a budget. We didn't change the toilets much. Only one toilet was changed. We didn't change the flooring. We didn't redo all the aircon. And we already spent $150,000 on that big apartment. So if you're talking about an even older apartment, $200,000 is quite standard right now for a large apartment. And then of course, you still got to buy some furniture. So we're talking about maybe at least $10,000 and that's being conservative, mind you, because this is a big apartment. You might be spending more like $20,000 to get your furnishings. But let me leave it there because already even with this, keeping the interest rate the same, we are going to be paying roughly a little bit more than our interest, but also we're going to be paying much more on the fact that we have to renovate and we have to fit out our house and have maintenance fees. Whereas the main cost here is our rental. But we are staying, so these are two cases where we are staying in the houses. So you can see that the amount of expenditure is actually going to be more for resale than for your new launch in the case that you're renting something while waiting for this building under construction. Now, here's the kicker. The biggest difference, because of the higher gross profit, therefore, is going to come through at the very end when you deduct your sale price. Because if you bought something for almost $4 million, now we're talking it will have to be a large format RCR condo, so a 4-5 bedroom. So one of those things might be you bought Sky. Congratulations if you managed to get a 4-bedroom premium. Power to you because God gave you a good ballot number. It is not impossible to imagine that at the end of 4 years, you would have increased your return on equity to 65% of the down payment that you put onto this thing, which would be $700,000 over dollars in your net profit after deducting expenses of your rental, compared to $10,000 profit after deducting all of your costs of renovation, maintenance, and your interest, not to mention stamp duty. I mean, stamp duty is the same across all, same price, but your return on equity is only 0.8%. Now, these particular figures are so staggering, but guess what? You can always take this net profit that you make from this building under construction. Can you imagine this $700,000 that you earn? Okay, let's be conservative. Let's say I only earn $500,000. I can take this $500,000. I can put it back and buy my big resale condo. I'm talking about what, my 2,000 square feet or even now a 2,400 square feet condo that originally I didn't have the equity for, because let's get this right. I mean, look at my calculator here. Initially, you only had at $3.9 million, you only had 25% of that. You initially roughly only had $1 million. If you now had $1.5 million, so I'm being conservative, I'm not even taking the full profit, projected profit of 700 over 1,000. I'm saying that now you have $1.5 million to your cash down payment. I divide that by 25%. I can now buy a $6 million house. That could get me a nice landed home in the RCR. You're talking about potentially a semi-D in your RCR spots. Or I could really buy a very nice large format. Now I'm talking like 2,000 to 3,000 square feet house in the RCR right now, and I wouldn't feel so constrained. So just imagine that we've not even talked about the full $700,000 that you would potentially be standing to gain. We're talking about just $500,000 capital gains in 4 years versus a $10,000 gain after deducting expenses for a resale condo due to the fact that the resale condo acceleration is not making sense. So then what can you do? You can go ahead, take the 6 million now that you have because you can leverage more money into a landed home, or you can easily afford, you don't have to stretch all the way to $6 million. You can easily afford a larger condo in the most desirable location in Singapore for less than $5 million. We're talking about by the time that condo would maybe still only worth about $4.3, $4.4 million, but you would have that capital gain already with you. And by the way, because you're paying progressive payments, don't forget that the money that you retain back instead of having had to pay everything up front, you could still have used that money for your other investments, your other gain, and you could still be gaining on that year on your 5 to 7% easily on the S&P index funds. So there's lots of things that you can do with that money in the time that you are also not committing it to the purchase at a point, because we're talking only about that 20% down, and the rest of the money, if let's say you didn't take a full mortgage, you could have been putting that money into other things. In conclusion, I think I have showed enough math for you to understand that capital gain will always win, because in this particular environment, the resale condos continue to stagnate. So I know a lot of you are wondering about this diagram, and I won't have time in this video to go through this entire diagram, but the main reason why that the new launch can continue to accelerate and why your resale condo is not is because your resale condo is in this phase where we already have many, many different owners who have owned it in the past. So if you entered at 1,100 PSF for, let's say, this particular condo, you can exit at any point and still make money. Whereas the new person who buys it at 1,700 PSF would need to sell it for at least 2,000 PSF to make any form of real money. And that is the problem that most people face in resale condos, like myself, because you don't really make any money after paying off your renovation, your mortgage interest, your maintenance fees, etc., etc., etc. So the stagnancy of the resale condo is largely affected to the point that it is in a resale phase in its property life cycle. And you can't change this fact, because the only reason you get another big jump is due to either specific market conditions to do with our GDP or the entire property price index, such as what you've seen with COVID, and how here these became parallel lines only after that entire COVID surge. Previously, this particular condo, which is in the Queens, was actually having a decline in its resale phase downwards, compared to the new launches Commonwealth Towers and Queen's Peak that were actually facing a very, very good uptake. 20% up just from your launch to your TOP, and 13% for Queen's Peak. Now that was an inferior development because of the bay windows and the layouts, but just looking at these two trends, you can see that they bucked the trend going upwards compared to your resale decline phase in the older developments. And that's why it's very important for us to take advantage of where we are in the property life cycle to make sure that for that particular property, we're buying at a relative low. It's the same thing, like if you're buying stocks, it's really about your entry price, and that's to do with the entire business cycle. You buy low and sell high, that's the way you make money. And so how do you buy low? You buy at the beginning when the developer has relatively high supply, right, and there's relatively low demand, because most people want instant gratification, but you are willing to wait, you are willing to rent, and you are willing to see your capital grow in a way that can only happen from launch to TOP phase. Now, even in the post-launch phase, because there are many condominiums now in the post-launch phase, which actually have locked in much lower land prices compared to the new land prices that are going to be the norm. So Bayshore, Chuan Grove, these are prices for the land at 1,300 plus PSF, PPR, and that means that they're going to be launching at roughly 2,800 PSF. That's surpassing the current even RCR average, which stands at about 2006 to 2007 right now for RCR new launches. So if you can find a post-launch at roughly the 2005, 2006 kind of PSF pricing, you considered having a very safe entry, because the new launches for next year are going to set another new benchmark, and you can be assured that this is safe. You have price protection from the other new launches that are coming up in 2026. Of course, at TOP, that's when the most emotional buying and selling happens, and I even have a personal story to attest to that, because my parents themselves paid a record price for a 4-bedroom and key residences, and that actually left the original owners with a cool almost $600,000 profit that they walked away with, because they took action, bought a large format, new launch 4-bedroom with very, very good mass appeal. We buy one with mass appeal. We buy one that is probably going to be for own stay, because what happens is that at the end, when the launch happens, when the TOP happens, those who bought for own stay are not going to sell. So when you sell something that is very, very much for own stay, which means larger format apartments, like a large 3-bedroom, 3+ study, 4-bedroom, even 5-bedroom, the rarity of that kind of unit is going to allow you to sell to the emotional buyer who really wants that format. Right, so with a $4 million budget, you have a lot of options. And so if you want a more detailed breakdown of what kind of new launches or post-launches factors we could be looking at, because the new launch season is going to be up for the year, but post-launches are still happening and developers are not so motivated to stage up the prices yet because we're coming to the end of the year. Everybody kind of just wants to make sure that they move units. No one is trying to push, rock the boat too much. I'd be really happy to do a more specific breakdown on which projects, depending on your appetite, depending on your budget, depending on your life stage. What's most important is that we create a really customized game plan to make sure that real estate serves the family and not the other way around. I'm sarahxmiracle. I make videos like this every week about real estate, and because I'm a mother of 4, I hope you can empathize with me and I can empathize with you. Subscribe, hit the notification button, and I'll see you next week. I am just overwhelmed by the response, and I'm so grateful that so many of you are now thinking about this question